Welcome to the Language Fuel podcast. Our mission is to fuel the teaching and learning of languages worldwide. I'm your host, Joanna Smith. Hello and welcome to episode number 10 of the Language Fuel podcast. Today, I thought I would update you all on my Maori learning journey and the things that I've learned about language learning in the modern day era with the internet and social media and how much easier it seems to be than it used to be. So I think it was episode number 6 that was the first part of this series where I started learning Maori and I sort of took stock of where I was up to and what I had known until that point about the language. It's been my intention not to make use of a formal language classroom because part of this is demonstrating the idea of self-directed language learning, and as I mentioned just before, it is pretty easy in this day where there's a lot of resources available, particularly for the bigger languages. So the first thing that I did when I've chosen to start to learn Māori is I looked for an app. I thought for many languages, I know there's Duolingo and a whole bunch of other things that my kids have played around with, to learn Spanish or Portuguese, and it's been quite fun seeing them take an interest in whichever language they happen to have heard about. So one of my daughters was reading a novel with a Portuguese speaking character. So she said, you know what, Mum, I'd like to learn Portuguese. She gets out her tablet, finds this app and starts learning a few phrases. Now, it doesn't last long. It's only a bit of an experiment, but how fantastic to expose herself to some words and phrases from another language like that. And I think it's wonderful that children can, because it is actually very, very accessible. So I went and had a look using my iPad. I do have a Samsung phone with the Android and any apps on Android, but for actually doing anything for a longer period of time, I have an iPad as well. So I went to the iTunes, to the App Store, and I was pleasantly surprised to find 3 or 4 different apps for learning Māori. Now, I didn't want to pay anything. Not because I'm being cheap, because some of them are only a few dollars, but just because I want it to be as easy as possible as it demonstrate, for anybody who may not want to be paying us. And there's a wonderful app called Te Pūnamawa. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sure I've got the stress wrong. And it says it's the world's first Māori language and culture mobile app course. And it's been fantastic. So I've done the first level course, and all of it's free up until you get to the assessment part, and then I think you need some sort of username and password, and perhaps that's where, if you were having a teacher who was using this app with you, you'd get that sorted out. But I found the first level very, very good, and of course it was very simple, and I had really kind of known already the greetings and that sort of thing, but it just cemented them, and it had sound recordings of native speakers saying the greetings, little dialogues and videos of people. It had a couple of songs where the words were very simple and it was sung. And so I really enjoyed just immersing myself in that because I could understand it, and it was just cementing the beginner level Māori that I do already have. So that was fun, and I was very pleasantly surprised to do that. And an app is a kind of a resource that suits me, so I can, before I go to bed at night or first thing in the morning, I tend to check social media, and I can have a little play with that. So that was the first thing that really surprised me to find, and I will work my way through some of the higher levels there. The second little step that I'd like to share with you comes from an idea that I found on Facebook, and I have since linked it on the Language Fuel Facebook site and also on Twitter. It was an article from Psychology Today, a little bit sensationalist in its headline, and it sort of says, "Man wakes up from coma and suddenly speaks fluent Spanish." Now, most people will go, yeah, right, that sort of doesn't happen. But I read the article, and it is actually true. Now, what it didn't say in the headline, because you can't get that information in, one sentence, is that he'd actually grown up with a brother who was a fluent Spanish speaker, and his brother would just speak Spanish with his friends and so on. And I'm not sure why this man didn't speak Spanish, but the article said he didn't actively speak Spanish before that. However, if you're growing up in the same household where Spanish is spoken fluently by people that you love and you're seeing them every day, day in, day in, day out, speaking that language, passively you will certainly gain an appreciation and certainly a lot of understanding. He probably understood it before his accident. So anyway, what happened was this was a medical study that they'd published where a man had received a brain trauma and his language facilities were not, his English language facilities were no longer working after his coma, but he was able to communicate through Spanish even though he previously hadn't actively used Spanish. So it's obviously an extreme example, and hopefully none of us will ever have the experience of having brain damage. But it just reinforced the fact that a really good foundation in passive understanding is super, super helpful for later active use of a language. So as language teachers, it's really important to choose a lot of materials that can be given as input, even if it's passive. And when I say passive, I mean either reading or listening. So it's not the person actively producing the language themselves. It does have to be comprehensible though. So in the case where the man was in the coma, of course, being a sibling with this other person, he would have been playing on the playground and hearing the words in Spanish, what he's probably saying in English or whatever. So he kind of knew what was going on. So in a language classroom, you can replicate that by choosing stories either to read or to listen to that actually you already know. You already know the meaning of a story. So that's where the fairy tales and fables and things like that. Or other famous stories, Harry Potter, or movies that you've already seen in English or you've already read the book in English. So it doesn't necessarily have to be new material, but something that's very understandable. So anyway, after I had been thinking about this a little bit and I read that article, I thought I need to find myself some Maori that I can just listen to, something relatively easy that will be kind of comprehensible. Now, in comes the podcast. I thought, I wonder if there's any Maori language podcasts that I could listen to. I found two, and for this I do go with Android, simply because my phone's the one that I take around with me if I'm at the gym or whatever and have headphones or going for a walk or driving. My phone's always with me. So I do listen to podcasts on my Android phone, and I found one called Bucky. And the blurb here says, join this week's students in the brand new series hosted by Pānia Papa, using a range of games, music and activities to teach te reo Māori. And I thought, fantastic, this is what I need. Now I've only listened to one episode. For some reason I couldn't see all of them in the app that I'm using. I will go online later to find more. And it was a little bit too difficult for me. I did understand some conversations that they were having with people. So the host would go and visit people, I think, around the country. This is what I'm understanding. Say hello, ask them where they're from, and I'm assuming they're talking a little bit about what they do in their day-to-day and things like that. I could definitely understand the greetings, which I had also formally learnt on this app previously. So it was great to hear the tēnā korua and things like that, hello to two people, actually being used, because it's a little bit theoretical in my head. I understand what it means, but when you hear somebody just actually going ahead and using it, there it is. Yep, it's true. Now, that reaction that I had, oh my gosh, it's true, people do say that, reminded me of a story when I was teaching English weak forms. So, for example, we would say in instead of and. And I remember students sort of not really believing me that English speakers would speak that way. And I found a phrase for them to hang on to that demonstrated that it's true. And that was the phrase pack and save, which is a supermarket chain here in New Zealand. And which means, you pack your own groceries and therefore you save money. So pack and save. But the way that they spell the name of the supermarket is pack in with a letter N, pack and save. So when I pointed that out to my students, that even people spell the word and sometimes, and these are students who had lived in New Zealand for a while, their eyes became really big and they said, I never knew what that meant. I didn't know what the letter N meant. And I said, it's AND, stands for and. Pack your groceries and save money. So they sort of went, wow, it's true. And from then on, they could actually recognize it and hear it. So this experience of me hearing a greeting in use in Māori where, oh my gosh, it's true, is an example of that awareness raising, that awakening that students have to have. So I guess if I were to relate that to teaching, say, French or Spanish or whatever from in an English-speaking country, having some genuine texts that you can demonstrate to your students that this is genuine language, it's actually authentic, people do actually speak that way, is very, very powerful. So that was a good thing to remember. All right, and then I've got a couple of further examples. One is my learning via Twitter. So I'm trying to make an effort to follow some Maori speakers, I guess on Twitter, though they'd be writers or tweeters or whatever you call them, tweeters. So people who are actually tweeting in Maori. Now, of course, a lot of the time I don't understand it. But occasionally, some kind soul will post a post with a phrase and a picture, and it's so obvious what it means that I go, I just learned a new phrase in Māori. So the first time I came across this, I'll just pick that up on my screen now so I can refer and thank the person. It was at Te Mihinga, and she posted a lovely video. It was a beautiful sunny day here in Auckland, and I don't know if she's in Auckland or not, but perhaps in other places it was also sunny. A little tiny video going across a fantastic sunny view, and she said, He rangi pai huarere, a glorious day, and then the hashtag te reo. And I just thought, I've got it. He rangi. I knew that rangi kind of meant sky. It possibly means day as well. Pai huarere, I know that pai means good. It's put together. I've then Googled the word huarere, and the Maori dictionary online says it means weather. So putting that all together, a beautiful day, good weather, a day with good weather, or a sky with good weather. He rangi pai huarere. And I never forgot that. So thank you so much at Te Mihinga for your wonderful post. It's great to learn that way. And I've seen a few other posts in Te Reo. None is absolutely crystal clear and easy for me to grasp. I'm still very much a beginner. So, but I am learning that way through Twitter. So again, if you're a language teacher, think about ways that your students could use Twitter in the same way. Of course, with young people, obviously there are dangers associated with social media, so that does need to be carefully managed. But perhaps if you yourself find a good speaker of the target language who is tweeting at a helpful level and safe types of posts, you could recommend that to your students. And then, of course, the other big social media site that I'm active on is Facebook. And again, I'm trying to find some groups or things, people to follow on Facebook or to friend on Facebook who are posting in Māori or something like that, or posting about Māori resources. So I found a wonderful post. I'll just bring that up now to see who it was again. Oh, how about that? It's a page called Let's Learn Māori. You can't really get any clearer than that as to what the page is about. So, of course, I liked it. And at some stage, there was a fantastic graphic that they posted, which is a chart of how to put together stative sentences. So we're getting into grammar, obviously. So it's just got 3 columns. The first one they've labelled tense, the second one state of being, and the third one pronoun. I'm not sure if I would, as a linguist, use the word tense to describe this, but certainly as an English speaker, I know what tense is, and so I can relate to that. I think linguistically speaking, technically it's a particle indicating a type of state of sentence. But anyway, we won't get into details. The point is, you could say something like putting the columns together. If I'm going to go with what they've labelled past tense, choose what they've called happening now, and then a state of being, for example, and pi, meaning a different good, state. I could use the word for thirsty, and then the pronoun. And then
So,
and then
before
a
an
name,
animal
for
or
example.
a thing, I
So
could use the word te.
Peter.
So the example they've
Peter
given is
was
te
good, and I'm
kuri, the
assuming
dog.
maybe he'd
So
done a
putting that
production or something
together,
like
I
that.
could say,
Kei te hiainu te kuri, which I'm assuming means the dog is thirsty. So it's happening now. So again, kei te hiainu te kuri. Now, just this one poster has enabled me to potentially make hundreds of sentences. Now, of course, I have to think a little bit carefully, as I've demonstrated, to try to put a few together. And the funny thing was, on Facebook they said, have a go, make a sentence using this structure. And it was great because everybody was replying and putting structures together. And the problem with me was that I didn't know enough nouns. I actually just didn't have the vocabulary. So I knew that ika was fish. So I think I said something like I pau te ika, the fish was consumed or gone, sort of thing. So I made one sentence, but I just don't actually know enough vocabulary. So I think probably the next stage for my Māori learning, as well as practicing some of these states, because I guess the point of the poster was that they've listed perhaps about 20 different states in that middle column that you could use, is to simply get a few nouns under my belt so that I could actually put them into that structure that I've learned. But again, I guess it reminds me, as I'm learning this, the power of one piece of paper. So a piece of paper that I've since printed from the image that I saw on Facebook. I mean, you could make this a poster in a classroom, couldn't you? So the power of posters around the walls in your language classrooms. If someone's trying to remember how to put together a certain kind of sentence, a glance at the wall in big, colourful print, it can be really, really helpful. So, and again, over time, as I get to know and remember what these tenses are and some of the vocabulary, I'll probably never need to refer to the poster again. So it's a way to scaffold that learning and, a hand up while I'm still struggling to remember things. And then hopefully in the future I would never need it. So as a teacher, remember to buy posters, simple posters, colourful, bright, easy to use, and you can have a handout that's the equivalent that the students can keep in a folder somewhere to refer to as they need to. Very, very powerful. So that's it, just the 4 things that I've learned in the past sort of month. First of all, finding an app that has a lot of different multimedia that's very useful and very easy to work with. Secondly, finding a podcast that I can spend some time just listening and let the words wash over me, and hopefully if I can find a slightly easier few episodes, that'll be great. And then of course on Twitter and Facebook. Those have also helped me out. So hopefully this has been helpful for you as either a learner or certainly a teacher, remembering some of the tips and tricks that make language learning a little bit easier for your students. Until next time, ka kite anō. Thank you for listening to the Language Fuel podcast. You can navigate to the show notes and links via our homepage at www.languagefuel.com.